This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome back to another year of the good, the bad, and the Hungee on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. My name is Tyler Fornes, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Fred Moreland. Fred, are you excited for the Sasha updates and buzz for the next week and a half?
Oh boy, we are in the dead spot with that. I think we'll learn a lot of information by what happens on this coming Dynamite. I think that'll be very telling. But hopefully we hear some good news, and there will be feasting and dancing in Jerusalem this year.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's also, we're going to learn more about it from Tokyo Dome, which happens from the time we're recording in just about 12 hours. So we are right in the thick of things. Wrestle Kingdom is here, and it's one of the reasons why we're not having Game 7 of the Elite Death Triangle, because Kenny Omega will be wrestling Will Ospreay in the co-main event of Wrestle Kingdom, in front of actual cheering crowds. I cannot wait. I fell out of New Japan mostly because of the clap crowds, and now we are back. It is going to be fun. But Fred, we have a lot to talk about today. And
we do have a lot to talk about.
It's going to be very interesting. Some of the little topics we talk about. Obviously, we're going to talk about Dynamite, and we're going to give our picks for the Wrestling Observer Awards, which, now that the calendar year is done, we're going to get a little bit of a jump start on the awards, because one, it is something that we have delved a lot of time into, and Fred has a tracker, which we will talk about when we get to that topic. But we have to at least talk about Dax Harwood's bullshit, where he started a podcast with Conrad Thompson, of all people, which that sounds like the biggest vanity project of all time. But there was a little bit to come out of it. He apparently pled with both sides to work out the issues of brawl out between CM Punk and the Elite. And we all know that he's a mark for CM Punk. They're buddies. Like, I can't take anything he says seriously, and especially because he's doing it with Conrad Thompson, who, big wrestling fan. He's also a big carny, because he makes a ton of money off wrestlers basically lying on air. Like, good for him. You're making money. But
83 weeks and something to wrestle with Pritchard and all that.
Now, I will say some of the Jeff Jarrett stuff has been fun to listen to, because you actually get excerpts from the book, which I haven't read the book. So that, like, for a while, I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And then, Jeff went on his bullshit. It's like, all right, I'm done. That's enough for me. But yeah, it was very interesting to listen to that in full. But what was your big takeaway from it, Fred? Because honestly, I just thought of it as a bunch of bullshit.
I mean, it's just kind of silly. We had him, basically asking the Elite and Punk to stay together for the kids, publicly. And, whatever. I mean, it would be best for business if they did work it out and could both coexist in AEW. But, I don't think that there's much motivation there from either side right now. I think they're both probably prideful about what happened and offended and angry. And I don't think there'll be any real movement on that in this very short term. Maybe something in a few months. Who knows? It's wrestling. Never say never. But I do think that Dax very much is good at getting attention for himself with the internet. And that doesn't necessarily mean like a way of doing it that I'm interested in, to be entirely honest. But he's good at it. He gets people talking about him one way or another. One thing I will defend about what he said was the thing about Colt Cabana, I don't think Cabana necessarily meant anything by it, but Cabana doing a North Carolina accent has a bit when he first met Dax Harwood. And, if you're from the South or Appalachia, it's easy to, you're kind of on the back foot about that stuff anyway, I think, as someone who grew up in Appalachia. And you have your different ways of kind of deflecting that. I like to self-deprecate. That's my go-to move. But I don't think there's anything wrong with him like being bothered by that whatsoever. I think that's a reasonable thing to do, while keeping in mind that Cabana probably wasn't being, hateful with what he was doing. He was probably just trying to do a bit because he's Colt Cabana. But yeah, and then I think that the stuff that really annoys me is that Dax going on Twitter to take shots at Dave Meltzer. Not to say that you can't criticize Dave Meltzer or anything, but I thought that what he was doing specifically was kind of crappy. Specifically accusing Meltzer of pushing a narrative against FTR when I don't think Meltzer has said anything negative about FTR this year. I mean, I don't know how you could with all the great work they've had. And also, I mean, I recall Meltzer saying several times that he thought that they should have built the big FTR matches in AEW bigger. So I don't know where Dax is coming from with that. And then he specifically complained about the fact that Dave Meltzer gave a Brainbusters Heart Foundation match from 1988 2 stars. And at that point, like I think my eyeballs rolled out of my head, because like the idea that you should somehow be mad about a 35-year-old star rating at this point is just insane. That was pretty preposterous. But Meltzer and Alvarez have been firing back on Twitter, and I don't know, it's just very dumb all around. And then this rolls down to the worst people on Twitter, and it's just all stupidity, and I hate it. It sucks.
God, being mad about a star rating from 35 years ago is the worst part of like our little section of Twitter. Like
from what I saw of what he said, what Dax said, that is by far the worst thing he said, just because it's so stupid. Like, log off. It doesn't matter. It's something from a newsletter that's not even available on his website. I mean, they haven't even put up anything before 1991, if I recall correctly, on the website. So like you've got to dig deep to find out what he's rating 1988 stuff. And
this is why people say touch grass.
Yes.
Like, go outside, Dax. Just honestly, just hilarious. And considering he is literally doing a vanity tour to earn Wrestler of the Year votes.
Oh, and like they've begged so hard for like good star ratings and stuff, and it's kind of like really sad. And then he turns around and he's like, I don't care about his star ratings, they're bad. And it's like, well, hold on.
Listen, buddy, you're talking out of both sides of your ass here.
So, I mean, I don't know. I don't have anything like terribly against what Dax did, I guess. Talking about the Punk stuff is fine because wasn't in the room, but he's close with Punk, and that can be an interesting perspective in a way. I hate that it brings that whole issue back to the forefront because I am I mean, it's been 6 months now almost. It's just a very tiring subject of discussion that doesn't really lead to anything good. But, it's the other stuff that is kind of hokey with him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's where we are.
It kind of is where we are, and it's not like we have anything else going on, which we'll kind of touch on Wrestle Kingdom here later on. But Dax, just shut up. Nobody cares about your stupid podcast. Speaking of other stupid podcasts, let's get back to the Good, the Bad, and the Hungee. Dragon Lee decided that he was going to retire, and he signed with WWE and will report to NXT here shortly. Yeah, I found this very interesting for a couple reasons, Fred. One, Dragon Lee deciding to go to where luchadors basically go to die. The only luchador that they've ever treated with any amount of reverence or respect is Rey Mysterio, and even that has been wishy-washy more often than not. He goes there, but he does so by winning the AAA tag team titles with Dralistico, announces it on a AAA show, which to me sends a bat signal up in the air that the AEW relationship is probably done. And we knew that the relationship with like Ring of Honor, New Japan, and CMLL was kind of strengthening up. So them not working with both companies makes sense. What I found really interesting is AAA now going to work with WWE in any way, shape, or form, because we know how Triple H wants to take this product globally. They've talked about in NXT Mexico, which I think would be hilarious because it would just bottom out so fast. They've obviously had NXT UK. They want NXT Japan. Do you think the two companies are actually going to work together?
Define work together. Will they work together to benefit AAA? I have heavy doubts. Will they work together in a one-sided relationship that WWE benefits from, but AAA doesn't? That's possible. I mean, it's like the story of the frog swimming across the river with the scorpion on his back, and the scorpion stings him, and the frog says, "Why? We're both going to drown." And the scorpion replies, "LOL." That's what working with WWE is at this point in time, and it's been like that since the 80s. So, I and the reporting is that the reason AAA went about doing it this way is because they wanted their tag team championship in photos from WWE with Dragon Lee holding it, and I don't know how that benefits your company at all. I don't think that does anything to give AAA buzz or make them look good or anything, but that's what they wanted to do, and that just seems very markish to me. And AAA has been kind of ass backwards about booking for a long time now. So I'm far from like a super expert on them, but I have been following them for 4 or 5 years, and it's just AAA just doesn't make sense with their booking a lot of the time, and I think this is just another bad business decision from them. I mean, you had the Lucha Underground, lawsuit leading to AAA Mexico versus whatever AAA USA is trying to take all their copyrights, because saying that they signed it over when they started Lucha Underground, and that froze AAA for a few years. Now they're sending Vikingo to the US, but you can't stream or put out on DVD Vikingo's matches unless you're PWG or possibly AEW or another company. So I don't know how that benefits AAA or Vikingo by not having exposure in the US, just having these black hole matches. AAA doesn't make sense, man. It's like a completely nonsensical company. They're not serious about doing business properly, I feel like. It's like they could have... There was a real point in time where they could have made serious moves against CMLL if they just had competent booking, but they don't. And, they are where they are now. They're just, running shows in Mexico. They're hoping they draw houses, and they're just trying to get money somehow.
Yeah. AAA is fucking weird, man. That they are just their own entity, their own beast. And look, if they want to dance with the devil, let them go ahead. Like maybe WWE can actually teach them how to mix their English broadcast properly, so we can actually enjoy a little bit of crowd noise.
If they do that, that would actually be the one beneficial WWE relationship in history for another promotion.
I know. I go back to the XFL. The original rendition of the XFL was such a massive failure, but what the NFL was able to grab from it is they took things and they were able to make technological advances. The sky cam, some player safety things. Like there were good things that came out of the XFL.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully that AAA will be able to take at least something from WWE in a positive way. But look, they're dancing with the devil. It's their own fault if shit happens. Speaking of AAA, Tay Mello and Sammy Guevara were stripped of the Mixed Tag Team Championships due to travel issues, missing shows, and being rescheduled for AEW. That's kind of just the cost of doing business with multiple companies. It happens. They miss shows because of this, that, or the other thing. In New Japan, outside of the story they're doing with Carl Anderson and the Never title, if you miss a show for any reason, and you're supposed to defend your title, you're stripped. That's just kind of the way it works. So I don't really have an issue with this. It just kind of is what it is.
Yeah, the interesting thing I thought about this was that originally they were cleared to go down there, and then they had to, I think, push back a week due to a minor injury. The Ruby Soho Willow Nightingale versus Anna Jade Tay Mello match. And I guess Tony Khan felt like they had to book it that night. And frankly, that kind of boggles my mind because absolutely nothing about that match screamed like must do tonight kind of deal. But that's why they missed the show. And there you go. I don't know, man. It felt very unnecessary. And I think if you partner with AEW, you will get access to wrestlers. You'll be able to have people come in, and you don't get that with WWE typically. But you also do have to understand that, and I think this has worked out several ways in AEW, that what you're trying to promote is secondary to what AEW is trying to promote. And unless you're New Japan, I think New Japan is the one exception. But if you're a smaller company, whether it be Impact or AAA or something else, and if there is a schedule change, your needs are not as big as AEW's needs per AEW. And I think this is not a surprise what happened. I think it was, in the abstract, I think it was kind of bogus. I think that there's really no reason to move that match to that specific night when you could have just done it on the upcoming Dynamite. But that's what happened, and they're within their right to request that or to make that change and tell them they can't go. And I definitely think AAA was in the right to strip the championship, but it's really it's a low mid-card title. It really doesn't mean anything in the company. The biggest thing it's done in the past few years, I think, is the Big Mommy, Hamburguesa storyline they had going for a while, which was definitely in the mid-card. But yeah.
Yeah, it kind of is what it is. This one is very interesting, and we know that CJ Perry, FK Lana in WWE, the wife of Miro, she did whatever the hell the Bailey show is, and she was asked if she received a contract offer from AEW. And this quote is directly from Fightful. Tony Khan runs his business however he'd like to run his business. I'm going to leave it at that. There is a reason why WWE is the greatest wrestling franchise and one of the greatest franchises in the world, and it's because they value sports entertainment, storytelling, and not just fighting for a, quote, wrestling title, unquote. But they value resolving conflict in the ring, and that's what makes wrestling special. You can fight over anything like Chris Jericho would fight over a list. Rusev fought in my honor so many times. I fought Summer Rae because she took my ex-boyfriend that I hated, and I wanted revenge. Those types of things are relatable and are relatable to women. A lot more women watch these stories where it's a soap opera where we resolve our conflict in the ring. That's what WWE is great at. Storytelling, bringing comedy battles, funny things, serious things. Personally, it's why I love WWE, because it's not just wrestling, it's entertainment as well. And I'm here to entertain and put smiles on faces, not just be the, quote, best wrestler, unquote. That's where I stand between the two different promotions. What a load of horse shit. Listen, if you want to say, I prefer the WWE style of storytelling where they have to beat you over the head with anything that they call subtle, okay, that's fine. I think less of you as how you consume your entertainment, all right? I just do, because you're trying to tell me that it's subtle. No, it's like going to play The Legend of Zelda and having the strategy guy right next to you and have to be walked through every little detail. No, you're supposed to explore and figure some of this stuff out yourself. And then if you can't, then you go to the strategy guide. So and to say that they don't resolve things in the ring in WWE, in AEW, that's kind of bullshit, isn't it? Like, how can you go through that whole thing and say, that it's relatable stories? Just admit you don't watch the product and you're an absolute buffoon who just wants to get a second payday. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But I can't take you seriously.
No, I found this quote this morning and just thought it was very funny, because I think it really does highlight kind of the difference between people who like other styles of wrestling and those who are just, for lack of a better term, WWE pilled, where they only like what WWE does. And someone mentioned this in the writer's Slack, and I don't want to steal their thunder too much, so I'm just going to lightly touch on this, but I think they're very right, where they said that the whole generation of fans, which isn't the entire generation, but the portion of the generation of fans of the past 20 years or so, that have only been around with WWE as the one dominant company in North America post WCW's failure, really having kind of WWE pilled to where they only see this one style of storytelling and think that anything else is wrong and bad because it's not what they're used to. And I had never considered this before, but this person in the Slack mentioned that they think that this extends to the wrestlers. that there are people in wrestling now who did not grow up, with the Monday Night Wars or with other North American promotions or United States American, it's like blah, 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 American promotions. I can't talk today. Sorry. Where they just see WWE style of storytelling, and that's the only thing they can come up with. This past weekend, my wife and I watched a movie called Blades from 1990-ish, 89, which is a parody of Jaws done by Trauma Films. Only instead of a shark, it's set on a golf course and the monster is a lawnmower. It is a bonkers movie, and it is more subtle than WWE storytelling. And they're playing, they're playing it very broad in this movie. The idea that you and I, we can't get on board with this idea that WWE storytelling is the correct way to do storytelling, because I think if you really pay attention to anything else, whether it be other styles of wrestling, or if you just watch movies or TV, like prestige TV or whatever, like you would watch this and you'd be like, this is bad storytelling. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you AEW is doing Shakespeare every week, but it's at least, feels more grounded, I think, than what you're getting now with like the Alexa Bliss storyline, with the Fiendess coming back and the Uncle Howdy masks in the crowd and other nonsense. But yeah, I mean, I just think that it's in part like this is not only what a certain percentage of the fans expect. I also think it's what a certain percentage of the wrestlers expect, and that could be part of why, like, Miro's unhappy, or Andrade's unhappy, or other guys who spend a lot of time in the WWE system are unhappy. And I think Rob Viper had a good Twitter thread recently where he talked about this and talked about how some people coming in from WWE are approaching it like, when Impact signs some big names back around 2010, people like Rob Van Dam and Booker T came in just seeing it as an easy paycheck. And I think there's probably some people coming in that are kind of seeing it that way. That they're in a secondary group and they're just fighting their time until they get back to the one major league. And I think that is a problem that AEW probably should consider moving forward when it comes to signing people that leave WWE. For every Moxley, you're going to get someone that is unhappy with not being in WWE, and probably more than one person per Moxley. Like maybe Sasha Banks will come and it will be happy because she'll get to just do wrestling. If that happens, yeah, that'd be great. But if Sasha Banks comes in and I don't think this is the case, but possibly, she's angry because she was in WWE, felt that was the big time, and wants to go back to prove, like that's her entire goal, then her time in AEW could be a disappointment.
Are you kind of talking like a Cody Rhodes arc?
I thought Cody at least took AEW seriously. I definitely don't think Cody thought that AEW was like a AAA baseball team or something.
I guess what I mean by that is just I'm going to leave, build myself back up so you take me more serious. Like we saw with Cody, we saw it with Drew McIntyre, because Drew had that great run in Impact.
I'm talking less Drew McIntyre Impact and PWG and the other indies, and more like Booker T leaving, getting cut and going to Impact because they're paying him, but not wanting to be in TNA because he thinks that they're second rate, which, you can make that argument, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, AEW is not being run like Impact / TNA at that point in time. AEW is a much more serious product that is much more competently run. But I think if you're still coming in viewing it as a second tier promotion, then that can very much be detrimental to the product.
It absolutely can. This is something that we're going to unfortunately have to touch on for probably the majority of the next 25 years, because so many fans that grew up with only WWE are just going to be so pilled that, this company's been around. It's the only company that's been around. This is how you have to do things. No, that's not how it works. That's not how innovation happens. Can you imagine going to General Mills and telling them, you made cornflakes. You should only make cornflakes because it's been so successful. You shouldn't try to make other cereals. Well, then how in the world are you going to get other cereals? How are you going to get Frosted Flakes? How are you going to get Cheerios, Honey Nut Cheerios, Lucky Charms, Fruity Pebbles? Like there's a reason why innovation is a good thing, and we just have to be accepting of it as a general whole. And it's inherently annoying and frustrating and quite frankly maddening that there's so many people who just refuse to allow that to happen or even be considered. This isn't a dictatorship. This is why capitalism is believed to thrive. And let's not get political here. I know I'm mentioning dictatorship and capitalism, but it's about having a free market and being able to do what you want to be successful. And AEW is doing their version of pro wrestling. It is very successful. It resonates with a large portion of wrestling fans in this country. And you can't just go and be like, hey, this, that, and the other thing. That's not how it works, man. Just lighten up. Be accepting.
Yeah, it's very interesting and something I hadn't really given much consideration before. And something worth considering more going forward. It's just kind of unfortunate that we've had this happen to wrestling. It'd be like, there's concerns within cinema, the films, whatever you want to call it, movies, that everything's going to be Marvelized because of how successful their films have been and how they have a very consistent style. And, the concern is that other people are going to try to copy that. And I think DC has tried that to different extents. And there's been other attempts at, creating different film universes that have flopped, like the short-lived attempt at the Universal Monsters one that Tom Cruise starred in the new update of The Mummy that kind of was quickly forgotten. But I mean, this is it's a concern when you have a monopolistic force within the market and people only really consider what that, that's the trendsetter and that's all people use as a frame of reference. And that's bad. It's not good.
No, it's not good, but we can kind of move on because there's only so much arguing that we're going to be able to do about WWE because, well, quite frankly, we agree on most of it. And it's annoying as absolute hell. Let's keep this moving. This upcoming Friday, we are going to have not only Rampage, but Battle of the Belts. They're doing Battle of the Belts live because Rampage is live, correct?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Okay. So
I don't think they've, of course, I may have missed some on Rampage this past Friday when I was watching it and just only half-assedly taking notes this week. I was traveling and stuff. I don't recall any matches being announced for Battle of the Belts yet. Am I wrong on that?
I think one got announced.
Okay.
But I can't remember which one it is. I want to say they might do Orange Cassidy, Kip Sabian, but they're doing Orange Cassidy, Trent. I don't know. It's Battle of the Belts. They'll have something. I'm assuming because Jamie Hayter's going to talk Friday on Rampage, we're going to get a women's challenge.
Yes, looks like we are going to have Orange versus Kip on Battle of the Belts. So, main event in any building.
I don't even think I can main event Cork and Hall. All right, let's move on. This is my favorite newser of the day. JR missed the last Rampage so he could go to the Cheez-It Bowl. JR, hell yeah. The Cheez-It Bowl was one of the better bowl games with Oklahoma and Florida State. 2, it had no business being good because Oklahoma was bad. But they hung in there and they played a pretty dang good game before they ended up losing by 3. And he got to go to the Cheez-It Bowl, which they had the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl yesterday, Fred. And I don't know if you saw this.
The false Cheez-It Bowl.
They had a giant bed on the sidelines.
Oh, and
players were celebrating in it.
Oh, my God.
Oh, dude. Brian Kelly got doused with Cheez-Its, and then after the linebacker Harold Perkins did a Cheez-It angel.
Yeah.
You know what Brian Kelly did? He picked a couple up and ate them.
Oh my God.
College football is just absolutely absurd in every.
I hope he was
way.
I hope Brian Kelly kept doing the that bad Cajun accent he did at his introductory press conference when he started the season.
No, he didn't.
That's a shame.
He has not kept talking about his family.
He should have gotten full Benoit Blanc. Just that was
incredible.
Yeah.
And it is JR's birthday today, so happy 900th birthday to JR the dinosaur. we'll keep going here. We do have Tokyo Dome in a few hours, and I think before we really get into Rampage and Dynamite thoughts, I think we need to talk about Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay, because I think this has a wide range of consequences moving forward. Not only is it Kenny Omega's first match back in 4 years when he dropped the IWGP Heavyweight Championship to Hiroshi Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom 13, but it's also big because this is the biggest match in the world that you could book right now. Omega and Ospreay. And I really hope that they have at least 25,000 fans in the Tokyo Dome. I'm not sure what their restrictions are at this point. I know they're doing some cheering, which is objectively phenomenal. Thank God. But this is the biggest match you could book. I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to run this in the States. And don't get me wrong, I think the first match should be at the Tokyo Dome. But if they tried to run this first off in the States, I bet this could come close to selling out a football stadium, because this is a match people would travel for. It's got 2 of the top 5 workers in the world. And this match, if they give it the ample time it deserves, which, with it being Wrestle Kingdom, and Kenny Omega's been in the co-main event before, and he's gotten 30 minutes, I think they're going to give them the time that they need. This is going to be phenomenal. And if you don't have New Japan World, you have to, under any circumstance, get it now. So then when you try to log in right at match time, you don't have issues like the site has been overloaded in past years. This is going to be phenomenal, Fred.
Yeah, if you do happen to be listening to this and haven't subscribed before, I will also tell you that it works on you're billed on a monthly basis, like the old Patreon setup. So if you signed up on January 30th, you would end up getting billed for January and February. So just keep that in mind if you're considering signing up. But yeah, I think this will be absolutely fantastic match. It could steal match of the year right out of the gate. I feel like the build for Okada, Jay White for the heavyweight championship has been kind of cold, but honestly, those two are fantastic together, so that match will also end up being great. I'm pretty excited for the show. I don't know when I'll get to watch it, because I've got a work project over the next couple weeks that I need to finish up. But I get why some people are cold on it. I get why people are cold in particular on Jay White, Okada, but I think it's going to be a great show. I think it'll be very exciting to have mostly cheering back. There's been a few shows in Japan that have been doing that, including some New Japan shows, and that's just a big difference maker, and hopefully we'll get more of that moving forward. But yeah, it should be exciting. It should be a great show, and regardless of if you're crazy enough to stay up late and watch that, as someone on the East Coast, that's just not an option for me because I enjoy sleeping. Or if you're going to watch it later, I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching it tomorrow. I have a financial meeting, I think, at noon. So
financial meeting.
I'm trying to be smarter with my money. I don't know.
Big bucks, Tyler.
Yeah. Look, I may write for USA Today, but let's just put it this way: I'm not making a fortune. It's just really freaking cool. All right. This one, I want you to start off with, because I'm not 100% sure what you mean, because we've only had one show here in the new year, and we talked about the fact that production is likely going to see a shift moving forward. Thoughts on new visual direction and promos?
Well, the promos are teasing. They're teasing, what the new shows are going to look like. They're redesigning the ramp, I believe, and it's a bunch of frickin' lasers. Tyler, you haven't seen the little promos during Dynamite that promoting the upcoming year for AEW and everything?
I don't know if I have.
Oh,
There's
man,
a possibility I have, and I'm just blind.
Yeah, it's a very, it looks pretty clean. But it's yeah, I'm trying to pull them up right now, and I'm not having much luck, of course, because we're live on air. Why would I plan anything ahead of time or include a photo? But, it's the new header image for their Twitter account is is kind of showcasing the look. I'm going to drop a link to you right now. You can just click that. But yeah, it's like with all the laser effects and everything, and it looks like they're going in a slightly different visual direction. Where they had more of a, I guess I would just say, a light based, with the elevator and everything. I don't know if they're going to be getting rid of that, but it'll be interesting to see.
Okay,
Yeah,
I did. Yep, I did see it. I had to watch Dynamite, unfortunately, yesterday, just because the in-laws were in town. I did not have the ability with our busy schedule to watch it. Okay, that I kind of like the little laser nuance. We'll see how things continue to progress and change, but it's a good start.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not like WWE-ified. I do like that their stuff looks different than WWE, just when it comes to visual presentation. I doubt that'll happen, but it's always a concern because they're bringing in the former Kevin Dunn replacement that got Kevin Dunn out of the company. But yeah, I guess we'll see. I think it'll be interesting, and I think it's debuting on this week's Dynamite, the January 4th Dynamite. So that'll be that'll be interesting. I think it's definitely be a talking point next week on our show.
Absolutely. And speaking of the show, let's kind of get into Dynamite. What did you think of the show overall? I thought it was solid, but not great.
I thought it was pretty darn good show. I thought there was a bunch of really good matches on it, and I don't think it was the best promo Dynamite, but I thought that overall the promos were all solid from what I recall, and there were several great matches on this that I liked a lot. I thought it had Ethan Page's best match of his AEW career, possibly excluding the Darby Allin coffin match, but I think I actually rated this Danielson one higher. I thought that that there was a good tag match there with Top Flight and Moxley. I thought that they had the best trios match since the pay-per-view. I thought the one on the pay-per-view was better, but I thought this one was great. The Falls Count Anywhere between the Elite and Death Triangle. And I thought the main event of Samoa Joe and Wardlow was excellent. I thought it was very good.
I want to start here.
Sure.
This Ruby Soho Willow Nightingale tag team, it was weird. And obviously, I understand the connective tissue, why they're teaming, but it almost felt like a WWE Can They Coexist without them beating you over the head with it.
Yes.
It just felt off. Ruby Soho wanted no business with Willow's bubbly energy, and it showed in the match, and it kind of cost them in the end because they ended up losing to Tay Mello and Anna Jay. Like, where are we going with this? Like, is this going to be something where Ruby fully goes heel and then we actually get a feud, or is this just kind of a one-off? Like, it just feels really murky to me.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. I agree with you on that. I think that they've been going to the partners turning on each other pretty hard over the past few months, especially right now where they're doing the Swerve Keith Lee storyline finally, and there's other situations. They've kind of teased issues in both Jericho Appreciation Society and the Blackpool Combat Club with Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Yuta. We kind of have best friends imploding a little bit, or at least teasing that. I think that we're kind of there's several storylines that appear to be going down the same path, which I think is to the company's detriment. But there was like a blind tag spot in this match where Willow got offended because Ruby Soho blind tagged herself in, and that's a complete WWE style spot, which I don't really like. It's very kind of dumb. I thought this match was fine. It was worked pretty well. I think I went 3 stars on it. But the storyline behind it, I kind of am not on board with. I'm not really enthusiastic with what we've seen so far. I'm not opposed to a Willow Nightingale Ruby Soho feud, but it, like I said, it feels like we're doing the same storyline multiple times.
Yeah, this is something that kind of concerned me a little bit with Tony Khan. And I don't know if it's going to actually continue to manifest like this, but you mentioned that he's just kind of going back to the well and going back to the well. We are now in Tony Khan's 4th full year as a booker. I don't think you can necessarily he obviously booked the 3 like pay-per-view style shows or 4 pay-per-view style shows before we actually got to Dynamite in October of 2019. But we're almost done with this. We're in the middle of his 4th full year of booking. How concerned are you that he continues to go back to the well with some of these kind of storylines? Because we know about booker fatigue. We know that like WWE basically has 6 storylines that they rotate in and out. One of them being the can they coexist gimmick with tag teams.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to be too concerned, but I also think that we should have it in the back of our minds that maybe Tony Khan, for as creative and smart as he is, doesn't have that full playbook of stories like we maybe initially thought.
Well, I think if you go through the history of wrestling, there's a very small number of people that have been high-level bookers for extended periods of time.
Gato's the only one I can really think of.
Gato's pretty much, and depending how you feel about Vince McMahon, I mean, he at least was on top for so long, and he did have several, 2 big successful periods. I feel like
he had several dead ones too. It was
oh yeah.
He built an entertainment machine, and the wrestling became secondary. And when the wrestling was bad, it didn't matter as much. Whereas I think a bad wrestling product for AEW would cripple it.
Yes, I agree. And Vince definitely has a shortfalls at wrestling gestures at the past 15 years of his booking. Never mind all the other bullshit with him. But Tony Khan, I think, is a good booker who is also flawed. I think that's pretty clear. You will see him screw stuff up sometimes. You'll see him make a mistake with a storyline or reuse a storyline multiple times at the same time. This is not the first time I've thought about this. I think that like a year ago or so, maybe it was 2 now. But at some point in time, he was definitely like running the same playbook 2 or 3 in 2 or 3 different storylines at the same time. There's definitely areas of criticism for him as a booker. You can point at, it seems like every backstage interview is immediately interrupted in the same style, and then they argue, possibly fight, set up a match.
Or how about the amount of backstage interviews where they say at the very beginning, hey, we've agreed to keep
no physicality. Yeah. I think that's also a fair criticism. I think that, we've been critical of him on here sometimes about misplacing talent or misusing talent. I think that we've got more information now about the whole Miro situation, where I feel like that's a little bit less of him just fumbling the ball and more there's extenuating circumstances with Miro, where supposedly he was offered basically the Ethan Page slot leading up to the last pay-per-view and turned it down because he didn't want a job in the end to Ricky Starks. That's the story that I think Meltzer reported, if I recall correctly. I think that Tony Khan is a good booker, possibly great, and he also is not perfect. And I think Geto has possibly an easier job because at least in New Japan, it's just let's set up the big matches, and angles are light. There's backstage promos, and there's the post-main event in-ring call out, but generally speaking, with some exceptions, there's not a lot of like angles on your average New Japan show. It's pretty much a straightforward wrestling show. AEW does try to do more angles. I don't think that like an outright a weekly TV show done New Japan style would really necessarily work in the United States. But I think there's 100% ground for criticizing Tony Khan as a booker. I still think we're going to get to this in a little bit. I still think he's my pick for Booker of the Year because I don't know that there's anyone else that really has a good argument against him, and we'll get to that. But I think he does far more good than bad, and I think he's more successful than not. But just because you are on the plus side in general doesn't mean that you don't have any goofs on the other side.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way to put it. He is going to be my Booker of the Year still. And I think we almost have a different set of expectations for him. And it's not necessarily fair per se, but he has done such a great job off like right out the gate. And he's been really good that I think we just almost have too high of expectations, but he's shown us that we should have that high of expectations for him because he has done so many good things and booked so many like long-term stories and short-term programs and been able to peak things at the right time. I just worry that he's going to fall into this trap where he just continues to use the same kind of things like ladder matches. Like we talked about WWE, hey, we're just going to do a ladder match. I think for a minute there, he got obsessed with the lights out match and he kind of calmed down on those. The only one we've seen, I think in the last year was Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs, which
was, I think there was a Britt Baker Thunder Rosa back in
that lights out
March.
match was, no, that wasn't this year.
Oh, was that the year before? Match. Okay. All right.
That was 2021. So,
okay.
I just worry that he's going to rely too much on these crutches when his brain has been shown to be so immensely creative, and I just don't want him to fall back into that.
There's another point of concern with this too, because he's gone on the record saying that you kind of can't trust people in the wrestling business because they will try to take advantage of you. And he said that with regards to like booking sometimes. I know that he has talked about working with people on the creative side, but if he's booking AEW and also he's going to book Ring of Honor and he's doing his stuff with the Jaguars and the soccer team, the Premier League team, I can't recall the name of now.
Yep.
Because I don't follow soccer. Fulham, yeah. It's definitely a concern that he's going to spread himself too thin.
Yeah, it 100% is.
And like if he's, I wish that he felt comfortable just off shifting some of this stuff. Like he doesn't have to hand the reins over on AEW's overall creative direction, but if he's like planning out Dynamite and the top tier storylines, but also spending time like booking AEW Dark Elevation, like what are we doing here? Your time is your most valuable resource, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But it's true. Like if he's up like 18 hours a day doing work and he's spending 3 hours plotting out a week's Dark and Dark Elevation, then the question you should probably be asking is, can I not pay someone to do this so I can use those 3 hours for something more valuable to my companies?
Yeah, 100%. I think he's going to eventually get that. Like Triple H has a circle of influence. I think we're going to start seeing that develop with Tony Khan. And because let's be honest, he was brand new to the wrestling industry when AEW started. It wasn't like he had worked with other companies. He obviously had talked to people like Meltzer because he's been a subscriber for eons and eons. And obviously being his dad is the owner of the Jaguars, he has money, as Fred just decides to fumble his mouse over there. I think those little things will make a difference because he's going to find people he trusts. I think you're going to see somebody like a Christopher Daniels be able to wield more power because he's been with him since day one. In theory, they've forged a really nice relationship. Can he continue to build those kind of relationships and have trust with these people? And I wonder if the departure of Cody might have any sort of impact on that, Fred, because let's remember here, Cody was one of the catalysts of AEW. Mm-hmm. CM Punk started the revolution. The Bucks and Cody Rhodes finished it. And he was one of the 4 EVPs brought in the company with obviously the Bucks and Kenny Omega. But Cody left and they had creative differences. So I wonder how much of that might influence him wanting to maybe not let people get so close. Well, there are a lot of factors here.
Yeah, and also his disappointment with how the first year of booking went. And then I always forget when this was. When was the disastrous Dark Order Young Bucks angle?
It was the last match of 2019.
2019. Okay,
it was the last segment of 2019.
It was then they took the week off, and that was the reporting is that basically that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And Tony Khan took over booking at that point because previously it had been spread out among the EVPs and everything. And I think he just was like, look, someone's got to have the overall vision on this. It's going to be me, and we're going to be following my lead moving forward. And that really improved AEW's product. So, in that sense, Tony Khan's a good booker. But like we talked about, he has his faults too. And that's going to be part of it. Like Dusty Rhodes was a good booker until he did his 5,000th Dusty finish and, harmed the territory, the Florida territory he was booking, and then Jim Crockett. Ric Flair was a good booker until he got tired of all the pressure being put on him, and then the issues with Turner management on top of that. Eric Bischoff had one good idea, and then he ran it into the ground. Vince Russo has had some good ideas, but they're caked in so much bullshit around it that you have to have like people specifically set up to like filter his stuff out and direct him. Jeff Jarrett was the head booker of TNA early on, and if you listen to You've Got to Be Kidding Me, he may not have been very good at that. But like you can go through the history of booking. Like Vince McMahon, you get the big Hogan era and everything, and you get the Monday Night Wars, but he had people helping him too. But then in between, you had the Dead era with the post Hogan pre Attitude era, where basically it was a failed Diesel run, and then like decentish business with like the likes of Michaels and Hart on top. It's just like that. There's Inoki, had a good thing going with New Japan for a while, and then he decided to go full blown into MMA and have all his top stars lose to actual fighters. It's the history of bookers is littered with a bunch of people, and frankly, there's a bunch that like had very flawed, if not outright bad careers as bookers.
Yeah, I'm gonna find how this evolves fascinating, and like I mentioned,
it'll be a really interesting year for his booking, because not only do you have AEW, but you have Ring of Honor as an actual full-time product. And is he going to hand that off? And will he be able to find people he can trust to be his lieutenants? Because if he doesn't, then I think he's just going to sleep half an hour a night. It's preposterous how much he does. He really should take some off his plate, frankly. You worry about that harming AEW long term.
No, I 100% worry about it. I thought initially that my thinking was if they ended up buying Ring of Honor, and this was at the end of the 2021 calendar year, that he may give the book to Cody and let Cody book Ring of Honor, because it was something that Cody was obviously passionate about, and he has so many creative ideas. But then you also have Tony Khan, who really filtered them out. So I thought that would have been like a perfect, like, hey, just go be creative over here. Kind of like how Triple H was given NXT. It's not identical, but it's a similar vein. And
sure.
I thought it could work, but obviously that's what happened. And I really don't think he continued to do this. Look, I am a football writer. I write for USA Today. I have this podcast. I have my own podcast that I do Monday nights for Daily Norseman and Climbing the Pocket. And I do college football prognosticating, and I'm working all the time. And I even told my wife the other day, I don't know how to relax anymore, because when I'm relaxing, I'm almost just like, I'll just put on some film of another player. Like, I don't sit down and just take a deep breath, relax. I'm always doing stuff. So like, if I'm doing that with in comparison, how little I'm doing to how much Tony Khan is doing, I can only imagine what his life is like. And like, I need to figure out how to relax. And it looks like Tony does too.
I definitely agree. Was there anything else you want to talk about off this Dynamite?
Yeah, I was very, very impressed with Top Flight versus Blackpool Combat Club. I loved how there still is an edge to Moxley and Castagnoli. They gave Top Flight everything in this match. And obviously, the Blackpool Combat Club won. But I think this was more about, hey, we want to really put these guys over as guys who can hang with us. And I think they did a great job of it. I gave it 4 stars. I thought the high spots were really good. The false finishes were good. And the way they won, and Mox was just like, basically looked at him and was like, fuck you. I thought it was just tremendous.
Yeah,
this is how you get people over.
Yeah, I thought this was a really nice, like 2-week storyline they did between these two teams. Claudio's European uppercut to win was awesome. Like that was a fantastic finisher and one of the meanest strikes I've ever seen in wrestling, and I love that as a finish. But I thought this was a very nice 3 3/4 match. Just it was good. And I like where Top Flight's headed. I think they're going to get featured pretty heavily in the world of Ring of Honor once that gets launched. And yeah.
Honestly, that's kind of all I have with Dynamite. I thought, I'll be honest, I did not like the main event. I hated the fact that they had to beat up Wardlow's knee so he would take the loss. The second I saw that angle, I knew Wardlow was losing. Like, I get you want to protect him. You're losing to fucking Samoa Joe. It's okay. It's Samoa Joe. Yeah, he's not losing to the Jungle Boy. He's losing to Samoa Joe. That's fine.
I think this is another solid criticism of Tony Khan in that he likes to protect people when they lose sometimes. And I think that's, a big part of his mindset. And he definitely did that here with Wardlow. I thought the match was worked really well. And I thought Wardlow sold his knee well. I think it's fair to not like the booking of having the injury be the reason why he lost. But I thought if you just accept that within the match itself, I thought it was worked quite well. And I thought Wardlow did a really good job of selling it. And I thought that it played great into the finish.
Yeah, I really did too. It was well done. I didn't like it. Like it's not like that they're not good at doing these things. I just don't like how often they do them.
Oh, that's fair. 100% fair.
It's the same thing we talked about, just going back to those same storylines. This is a crutch for Tony Khan, and he's afraid to let people lose. I understand Wardlow. You spent so much time building him up as this monster. The only people that beat him were guys like Cody, Moxley.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're talking the top echelon guys are the only one beating him. That's fine. That's how you build a guy up. You get him a ton of wins over these lower level guys. Then he loses to a top guy, and it doesn't really hurt him because you don't see him as that top level guy yet. Well, with the MJF story culminating at Double or Nothing, you saw this guy as a top guy now, and he held this TNT title, and now he loses in a 3-way, which, okay, that's fine. Stupid, but that's fine. And now you're doing an injury angle to protect him. Just don't have the match. Hold off on it. Like,
I think they're going to set up a rematch down the road, possibly a 3-way with Darby. I think, personally, to me, this was fine, the booking of this, but I get why it would bother people.
I mean, you know what? It's not that big a deal at the end of the day, but come on. Like, you don't have to do it. And I think that's one thing that Tony Khan can slowly start to grow and figure out.
Just as an update for you, in case you hadn't seen it since we're doing this show, Tyler, it's been announced by the NFL that the Bengals-Bills game will not be resumed this week. So,
do you remember Reggie Brown?
I think so, yeah. Reggie Brown or Reggie White?
Reggie Brown. It was week 17, 1997. Lions, Jets. Barry Sanders is trying to get 2,000 yards, and he does. Earlier on in the game, Reggie Brown's a rookie linebacker for the Lions. He's in a pile, and Jets offensive line gets pushed and basically torques his neck and breaks it. And he had like a severe bruise to the spinal cord, and he stopped breathing on the field. Yeah. And I'll never forget watching that as an 8-year-old kid. At the time, I was an 8-year-old kid. I'm just like, ooh, ambulances on the field. And I just thought ambulances were cool, man, because, I'm an 8-year-old boy and I don't know shit. Well, once I realized the gravity of the situation I saw in IV bag, it kind of terrified me. And I'm like, what's going on? Because, usually ambulance on the field, it's like, okay, this guy's really hurt, but he's going to be okay. That was the first time I had ever really realized that football was something you could die from.
Yeah.
And what happened last night with Damar Hamlin was a different but very eerily similar situation. And it shook me, man. It shook me big time. That was scary. It was heartbreaking. And to hear that he's in stable condition, albeit still critical, is just, it's such a tremendous outcome from what it could have been. And we don't give enough credit to EMTs, emergency technicians, the training staff the training staff for the Vikings saved Teddy Bridgewater's leg, because of their quick and decisive actions. And they were able to save this man's life, at least for now. And hopefully it's saved long-term. We just don't know enough information to make any kind of qualitative decisions yet, but they deserve so much credit, and the players deserve so much credit for understanding what the situation is and knowing that they shouldn't play that football game. Because in 97, they shipped him off and they started playing within minutes. And the fact that they were able to do that, and there are people, Colin Cowherd even compared it to Owen Hart earlier today, to be able to, in a multi-billion dollar business, basically tell everybody, we ain't fucking playing because of this. Good for them for doing what felt like the obvious right thing to do. And I know this complicates a lot of things. I was in multiple fantasy football championships for money, and that's obviously super trivial. But there's stuff like that. This was a huge game in the playoff race. How are we going to figure that out? There's so many little nuanced things, and I hope that Damar Hamlin's okay. He started a GoFundMe for a Pittsburgh toy drive. The goal is set at $2,500. It's now at, I think, $6 million. Chris Jericho donated twice. Did you see that?
Yeah, I
he
did.
Spelled his name Crust Jericho at first. He's like, I got to fix that. He respelled it and gave another $5,000. People are just pouring in support for this young man, and I don't know what this
situation.
Means.
Terrible.
I don't know what this means for his future at all, but I haven't prayed harder in a long time for any person or thing. I hope the best for him. It's heartbreaking. Yeah.
I kind of stopped following football closely about a decade ago, in part because of concerns about injuries and CTE and stuff. One thing that led to this was the Johnny Knox injury that happened with, when he was a receiver for the Bears back in 2011, and he damn near got literally broken in half got tackled weird, and he lost. He got a vertebra injury, and he still walks with a limp apparently in pain. But yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to, but I unfortunately watched the video of this of the injury last night, and he, it didn't look like much. It looked like a normal tackle, and then he just stood up, adjusted his helmet, and collapsed. And it's very, very scary that something that simple can happen and can just change someone's life forever. But hopefully he'll be able to recover. He's in the hospital. He's intubated. I'll let you.
Which is standard operating procedure.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Go ahead.
No, that was it.
Okay. I'll let you on a business secret of the medical field. The whole serious condition thing, that's not a real thing that doctors or pharmacists use. That's just, that's media talk really when you come down to it. There's no chart that you're going to pull up of patients, and there's going to be a little red serious or critical thing. That's just he's basically in the ICU. And that's it, but yeah, I mean, hopefully he's recovering. The biggest concern at this point is if he suffered any brain damage from the loss of oxygen. But honestly, if this is going to happen to you outside of a hospital, this is probably the best place it could have happened, just because they have so many people trained in medical care at an NFL game that you're going to immediately get help. And fortunately they were able to do that. But yeah.
And apparently Cincinnati has a tremendous level 1
They do,
center.
and it's very close. I live in Lexington, Kentucky, so I'm not far from Cincinnati. And when you go up there, when you cross the river from Kentucky into Cincinnati, you see the stadium on the right side of the bridge, and then it's probably 5 minutes, maybe 10, to the Cincinnati Hospital, which is a high-level trauma center. So they're very fortunate with the medical setup there.
Yeah, they really are. And all of our thoughts and prayers go to Hamlin and his family. And it's going to be a very difficult time. And I know Bills and Bengals players, just imagine being T. Higgins, the one who
Oh
hit
yeah,
him.
yeah.
And like his mom, like there were pictures of him with his mom in the locker room area because how do you come back from that?
Well,
Like, I
it's like D'Lo Brown. He paralyzed Darren Drozdov with a running power bomb in their dark match that one time back in the late '90s for WWE because there was someone threw a soda in the ring and they didn't get it cleaned up right, and so D'Lo went to do his running power bomb and slipped in the spilled soda, and Drozdov landed wrong, and D'Lo Brown apparently, blamed himself for it. And I think that really hurt his career. I think he just kind of lost the fire for wrestling to a large extent. He left for a couple years. He had he did some All Japan stuff, and he did a short stint in TNA that was pretty good, but he never gave it a full commitment. And that was about the extent of his in-ring career. He was done by like 2004, and he felt like he could have been a bigger star than he was at that point in time in WWE in the late '90s. But yeah, it's just terrible, and it's kind of like one of those things in wrestling where you see these tremendous flips and dives and everything, and they don't get hurt, but then you hear about someone tearing a pec muscle, taking a body slam or something, or a hip toss. And in this case, this was just a very bog standard kind of tackle. It wasn't some kind of ridiculous flying missile, leading with a helmet situation. And it just led to a terrible situation. So hopefully he's doing better. But that you mentioned the toy drive fundraiser he was doing, and I think it's last night. It crossed over $3 million, like in the matter of like an hour or two. Which is just a fantastic outpouring of love from people, and it's just a nice thing to see, and just a really sad situation otherwise.
Yeah, 100%. And I know we're kind of getting off track, but I think talking about this is such a big thing because not only does it happen in professional football, it can happen in wrestling. Just look at what happened in Big E.
Look at what happened to Jerry Lawler. I mean, yeah. Lawler had this exact thing happen to him. When was that? 2016, 2017? I'm bad at remembering exact years, but it was a few years ago that he was wrestling a match, and I'm sure Dolph Ziggler gets so tired of Lawler bringing up the elbows that Ziggler did to him, but Ziggler did a series of like 3 or 4 just his rapid fire elbow drops to Lawler's chest, and after the match, Lawler went back to commentary, and then he collapsed.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about. I do want to bring this up real quick. The NFL, stopped the game. Suspended it immediately, and then basically, I think the players and coaches, even if the NFL did say they weren't going to restart it, I don't think the players and coaches were going to. But WWE, I listened to Meltzer's show from last night where he and Alvarez talked about the situation with the football player and then Owen Hart. And, even if you give WWE, the benefit of the doubt with, the Owen Hart thing was unprecedented, who could have expected him to die like that? They continued the show. I think it's fair to be, even if you give them that spot, it's very fair to be critical of them continuing the Monday Night Raw where Jerry Lawler almost died. But that's a whole different subject.
Yeah, it 100% is a different subject. Let's move on. We have quite a bit to talk about still. We're gonna I'll read off what's going on the next couple Dynamites, what we have planned so far. Then we're gonna talk about Wrestling Observer Awards.
Yeah.
Dynamite, they're making their Seattle debut, and we're getting an Evolve offer match with Bryan Danielson and Tony Nese. I think that is going to be a lot of fun. It's a great way to get him on the show in a match that will be really good without actually having any storyline involved. Chris Jericho versus Ricky Starks in what's going to feel like a grudge match. Samoa Joe versus Darby Allin for the TNT title. After that tremendous match they had on my birthday a few weeks ago, Darby Allin comes into it felt like a New Japan, I'm just going to show up and challenge, but he was also protecting his friend Wardlow. So it kind of makes sense at the same time. AR Fox versus Swerve Strickland, which if you've never seen the Lucha Underground, I can't remember what they call their 3 stages of hell. Dante Fox versus Killshot.
Yeah.
Go watch it.
Can't remember what that was called either, but I'm going to Google it real quick. Hell of War, is that right?
Yeah, something like that. That was an absolutely phenomenal match that I highly recommend you go out and see. What's funny is apparently Jon Moxley didn't even know that Swerve Strickland was Killshot, which is just the most Jon Moxley thing of all time.
Extremely good.
It's awesome. Moxley will also be showing up to do a promo. There'll be an update on Adam Page. MJF is contractually obligated to appear, which I love it. We're continuing with this, hey, I'm a free agent in 2024 gimmick. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And then we also have the Dynamite in Los Angeles next week on 111. Game 7, the Elite versus Death Triangle in a ladder match. Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter versus Saraya and X. And they're also teasing Jon Moxley versus Adam Page. That would be an incredibly loaded show for Los Angeles. I want to think that they'll hold off on Moxley and Page for at least another couple of weeks, but who knows at this point, especially because we're so far from Revolution, we don't know what the plans are for that pay-per-view as of yet. We assume that they're going to be going with Bryan Danielson and MJF, but we just don't know.
Yeah.
The Dynamite looks pretty good the next couple weeks, Fred.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I think both will be really good shows. I would not be surprised if Paige Moxley is on that LA Dynamite. And of course, we also have the live Rampage this coming week with the Battle of the Bells afterwards. And I think the only match announced for either is Kip Sabian versus Orange Cassidy, as I think we mentioned earlier in the show. So that will be a match that happens.
Yeah, it will be. But let's talk about Wrestling Observer Awards. Fred, this is something that you've delved in a lot with your Wrestling Observer Awards shares, and you have obviously been a follower of this for some time. Why don't you kind of give a little brief rundown about what the Wrestling Observer Awards are for those who may not be fully aware?
Yeah, sure. Every year in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, of course, that's Dave Meltzer's newsletter. I think everybody that's listening to this knows what the Observer is. They have an open vote for subscribers in a variety of categories, going over the best and worst of the past year in wrestling. And, this year, I don't think there's going to be any new categories. I think that a couple years ago, he has 2 categories of awards with the separate categories are within. There's a category A or major awards where you vote for 3 people or acts within that. And then there's the category B or minor awards where you just vote for 1 person for that award. The biggest ones are, the biggest is the Lou Thesz / Ric Flair award, which is basically the MVP award. You kind of are supposed to consider overall contribution to the business in the previous year. So not just in-ring or microphone talent or drawing ability, but all of that. Then there's other categories like most outstanding, which is only in-ring. And then there's best of interviews and several others. We're going to skip the MMA ones. He does have some MMA specific ones. So we'll just ignore those because I don't care about that. I don't know. You still follow it some, Tyler, I think, but I
would consider myself a casual watcher. I watch when I have the ability to. I will throw on the pay-per-view, but I don't follow the sport enough to really be able to make any kind of qualitative decisions on it. I will say Edgar Maynard 2 is still the best fight I've ever seen, and I will not hear any arguments against it. That fight was freaking amazing.
I think my last pay-per-view was when Anderson Silva broke his leg. So
that sounds like a last pay-per-view match. Absolutely.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that leg is not at the right angle. That's incorrect.
Actually, it was at a right angle.
It was. That was the problem.
All right.
So let's start with Wrestler of the Year. So we're going to name our top 3 for basically the MVP award of the sport.
Okay. Oh, we're going to name our top 3.
Yeah.
I did not realize that. I have one.
Oh, just kayfabe it. We'll just make it up as we go. I'm not even in with a pre-existing list. This is just kind of my first draft. Last year's winner was Kenny Omega, and the year before was Jon Moxley. Mm-hmm. And 2019 was Chris Jericho. So we're on a 3-year stretch of AEW guys winning. Who is your top pick, Tyler?
Moxley. I really don't think it's close. What Moxley has really meant to this promotion, how he's been able to save them in times of need and carry the company on his back on multiple occasions. He held the title after CM Punk broke his leg. He held the title after Brawl Out. The man is never going to get a vacation. To him now, a vacation is going to be, oh, cool, Dynamite's in Cincinnati. I get to sleep on my mom's couch for a weekend instead of, staying at a Holiday Inn Express. Like, what he's meant to this company has been so overly tremendous. It's truly phenomenal. The only other person that I would have considered here is Will Ospreay, especially what he's meant to Rev Pro. The story that the flagship shared about that Ishii match where he didn't even have to go in and wrestle it. He called them and say, hey, I heard you need somebody. I'm in.
Yeah.
Like that's next level. That is somebody that you can count on to be great for you. That's somebody you can count on to be there for you. And he doesn't have to do Rev Pro. He wants to do
That's
Rev Pro.
fun for him.
It's I'm just going to go mess around and I'm just going to make Ricky Knight Jr. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
It's like Moxley with that Iowa promotion where he works high-level matches and, all the other indie stuff.
Prestige or IWA?
Neither. It's something else. I think Jimmy Jacobs is involved, but I forget which company it was now. But I mean, I guess I could look it up.
It's Axel Rotten that does IWA Mid-South.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Not Defy though. He's done Defy, GCW, Revolver. Revolver is what I was thinking of.
There are a lot of people that are doing Revolver now.
Yeah,
that's
they
kind
get
of
pretty
become
big names.
that's kind of becoming like not a super indie, but it's becoming one that's a draw for top end like stars to want to go work. Which
yes,
hell yeah.
Moxley's also my pick for this award for the first place spot. I think second and third are really interesting to consider. If you just go over the candidates, there's Roman Reigns, which if you're a WWE fan, you're going to vote for possibly first place over Moxley.
But why? I mean, what is your argument to vote Roman Reigns? One,
look, it's not my arguments. I'm just saying.
But let's create the argument because I think
he's the top guy in WWE. He's been pushed the hardest. He's been on top of all their major pay-per-views.
But we're talking MVP. He's not doing any house shows. He's barely showing up on television. Yeah. How can you call him the MVP when he's it's his choice? And you know what? With all the health concerns and stuff, with the fact that he's had leukemia multiple times, and obviously you can imagine his immune system isn't exactly great at this point. It's his prerogative to do that, and good for him. He's making what seems on the surface to be the smart decision to work less.
Work smarter, not harder. I have no problem with it.
Absolutely. But I don't understand how, with what he's done for the company, makes him an MVP. I don't see any argument for it.
I mean, I see the arguments. I don't agree with them. But he, basically it's the biggest company. He's the top star. He's the top push commodity. And he's been the central point of their biggest storyline all year.
And I'm Deion Sanders.
Look, I'm just telling you, man. That is what the people are going to think if they're going to vote for Roman Reigns first or second. That's what they'll be thinking of. Ospreay is a great contender. He's, as you've already mentioned, he's had a fantastic in-ring year. He's been pretty important to New Japan. He's been vital to Rev Pro, but Rev Pro is a small company, so I don't think there's going to be some people that don't give him credit for that. And I think that's kind of fair, to be honest. I'm trying to think of who else. Okada is a good one. I mean, he's been the top guy for New Japan for half the year. Then he won the G1. And has had another fantastic in-ring year. And honestly, after that, I think you get down to Chris Jericho is another good one. I think he's been vital in whatever they were trying to do. I mean, what they were trying to do with Ring of Honor. I don't think it's really his fault that they failed to get a TV deal for the company. But he, I think he's also been vital to AEW television this past year. I think there's negatives there with the JAS BCC feud going on twice as long as it should have, but you can point to extenuating circumstances with Brawl out there and also it not really being Jericho's fault. And then you consider stuff like the Action Andretti angle at the end of the year and the Eddie Kingston stuff early on. I think there's a pretty good case there. Just looking over my list real quick of guys. I mean, I guess you could make an argument for, if you really wanted to, I guess you could say Dax Harwood, but I feel like that's a stretch and a half. After that, I think it's kind of just, your novelty is the wrong word, but your niche candidates, you could argue Josh Alexander or Mike Bailey, I guess, from Impact. But I don't really buy those myself. So personally, I go Moxley first. I think Okada and then Jericho for the award.
I think Okada's a very good one. Wait, did I say Okada or Jericho?
You said Okada.
I think Okada's going, but I think Jericho's a great one because he hasn't been necessarily the top push commodity, but everything he's done has been gold.
I think outside of like stuff that I would not blame him for, I think the storyline went on way too long, and I've said that a zillion times on this show. But I think that his performances, in particular, have been very good. And specifically, I think he's been a key part to keeping the TV going and being entertaining. So I like him as a candidate for this. Can you think of any other candidates that I'm missing right now? Because frankly, I don't think anyone from Dragon Gate is a good candidate. I mean, I guess you could vote for the Great Muta for Noah if you're hardcore with them, though I think that's probably worse than Roman Reigns, if I'm being honest. Cody Rhodes was out too long. I don't think Seth Rollins mattered enough. Gunther definitely didn't matter enough as a top guy. I don't really think there's another strong candidate in AEW. MJF missed half the year. CM Punk missed half the year and also did damage to AEW with his out-of-the-ring shenanigans. Omega missed a whole lot of time.
He missed like 7 months of the year.
Yeah. So I think those guys are all out due to injuries. Okada, I think, is a lot like LeBron James at this point. Like LeBron probably should have won like 10 straight MVPs or something. But basically, I don't think the NBA writers want to just do that. You saw that with Michael Jordan. You saw that with all these other dominant athletes in the history of sports when it came to this voting. They like storylines rather than just be outright being, hey, LeBron's still the best, or MJ's still the best. So I think that's why Okada, I think it's kind of fatigued because he didn't have like an all-time best year. It was just another fantastic Okada year. So
hey, I have one more that we need to mention for
sure.
MVP. Toru Yano.
Well, he is the best wrestler in kayfabe. It's just well known. He only loses because he gets distracted. So many.
Kenny Omega still owes him an IWGP World Title shot. He does.
He does. I didn't think of Stardom, and I'm still getting caught up on Stardom, but I feel like Julia or Syuri would be good candidates there from what I've read. So that's an option. Maybe I'll change my vote as I keep going through the year, but to include them. But I think that I'd probably go Julia fourth. That's just me. Okay, so our next award is most outstanding. So that's just best in-ring. Last year's winner was Shingo Takagi, with Kenny Omega winning the year before, then Ospreay in 2019. I think this has to be Ospreay's award this year.
It has to be Ospreay. What he's done, how many great matches he's had with how many different competitors across multiple promotions. Hell, Will Ospreay had a 5-star match with Orange Cassidy. Mm-hmm. He had multiple 4.5-star matches in tag team matches, trios matches.
5-star with Michael Oku in Rev Pro. And I like Oku, but he's not like one of the top 50 wrestlers in ring right now.
I may be off by a couple months. I think his match with Callum Newman that almost got 5 stars was this year too.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't even watched his Rev Pro stuff. I'm aware of what he did there, and it was all fantastic. But I think he can win the award just off his New Japan stuff, frankly. Who would you go second and third with?
Moxley and Okada, probably. You could argue El Hijo de Vikingo because I think his work's been insane, but it's so compared to the other wrestlers on this list, it's so limited. he just doesn't have as much of a catalog as some of these other guys, and I think that just kind of hurts in general. But Moxley's had some tremendous matches. If you want to go I don't know, this is only singles. You can't do a tag team, right?
I don't think you could vote for a tag team, but you could vote for a member of a tag team, and you could consider their tag team performances.
I mean, this is where Dax Harwood's probably going to get some votes.
Yeah. And I, we've had disagreements on how good his singles matches are. I am considering him for the third spot. I would go Moxley second. I would think about Danielson here, or Ray Phoenix, Mike Bailey, even Okada.
Oh, Speedball's a good one.
Yeah, because he worked everywhere this year. Like he worked really hard, and showed up a bunch of places. I think you could even vote for one of the Young Bucks. I think it's hard to differentiate between the two because they didn't have as much single stuff. But I thought that they really made a big push with the Best of 7 series to close out the year, and I think that's a defensible choice there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's this is a Will Ospreay award. They may end up naming it after him at some point.
They may. I would probably vote Danielson third. I'm admittedly a mark for his stuff, but I think he had a fantastic year. Tag team of the year. 7 of the last 8 years it has gone to the Young Bucks. The 1 year was 2019 when it went to the Lucha Brothers. That combo is going to be broken this year because I don't have any doubt that FTR is going to win this.
That's FTR. Yeah, it's FTR. The Bucks have been great. The Bucks are great, but it's FTR.
Yeah, it's undoubtedly theirs. I think I would vote the Young Bucks second, and third probably go with Lucha Bros. I would consider Aussie Open, but I haven't seen that much stuff of theirs in comparison. And I haven't seen as much high-level stuff from them as I have seen the Lucha Bros. One thing to consider with this award is trios are eligible. So not so much this year, but moving forward, I think that's something that could be very interesting with this award, where you could actually have a trio win it, because that has not happened to date.
Yeah, I think we're eventually going to see the Elite win this award. Yeah. But FTR's year, and you know what? They won't get any votes, but I think you have to give the Briscoes some love here.
I think I do think they will get votes. I do. But the problem with them is just visibility, and outside of AEW, their most visible stuff has been some GCW appearances against, frankly, inferior opponents, and some a few Impact TV matches that were not promoted very much at all.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I also think Aussie Open will get some love.
Yes, I do too, and they deserve it. Some people will vote for the Usos. Don't make me go through the Roman Reigns argument again. I'm just telling you, people will vote for them. And then there'll probably be a few vote for other WWE tag teams, like the Street Profits or even the New Day.
Yeah.
Promo of the year, or best on interviews, really. Last year's winner was MJF, and the year before was Eddie Kingston. 2019, Chris Jericho. I think this is an interesting year.
I gave it to MJF, but I'm willing to listen.
I think MJF's a top candidate, but he also missed a decent chunk of the year. CM Punk is a high-level candidate, I feel like.
He missed even more of the year.
He did miss even more of the year. I'm just saying he's a high-level guy. Eddie Kingston, but he disappeared for half the year. Ricky Starks really didn't get that much stuff to do this year. I think that if he was doing stuff like that those MJF promos and even the stuff in the Hobbs feud more regularly, he would be a great candidate, but I don't think he's there. And just to go through the WWE people, some people point to Cody Rhodes, but he missed 2/3 of the year, so I don't think he's a very viable candidate. And then there's people that will vote for Roman Reigns or Paul Heyman, again, because they are top push guys, or Sami Zayn, because he's, been the entertaining guy in that whole storyline. Frankly, I think some people vote Sami Zayn for MVP, actually, now that I stopped to think about it. But I'm just telling you. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on this one. I think it's some combination of MJF, Punk, Jericho, and Kingston. But I really haven't figured out how to shake that out yet. Do you have any thoughts on this about how you're going to vote?
I think it's going to be MJF, but I'm giving serious consideration to Ricky Starks. And honestly, I'm giving serious consideration to Will Ospreay. What he's been able to do on the mic, and obviously it's a different world in New Japan, how they do their promos. It's backstage, it's very press conference-like style, but nobody's actually asking you questions. Like, it feels more sporty, which I think, New Japan, king of sports, makes sense. But how he's been able to deliver, and I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the Will Ospreay Kenny Omega presser from earlier today.
I heard about it, but I have yet to see it. I heard it's great.
Don Callis is tremendous.
Yeah, he would be another option if he stuck around, but he was gone half the year too. So, okay, I don't know how much longer you want to go on this episode, so I'm just going to power through the rest of the top category awards.
Let's do the top ones.
Yeah, promotion of the year. Who you got?
WWE. No, I think it's AEW. I don't think New Japan's up there yet. They need crowds back. Once they get crowds back, I think you would see a lot more votes for New Japan.
I think the only viable candidates really for this are AEW and Stardom. I think Stardom has grown some this year, and I feel like that's very hard to do in Japan right now. Granted, I think a lot of the growth has been overseas. I don't know that any of the Cyber Fight ones have grown that much. I mean, I think Noah's been benefiting and drawing from Keiji Muto being around, so that's an argument for them. But I also think there's a lot to be negative about with them and Keiji Muto not really being able to move anymore. I don't have another good argument for a US-based one. I mean, there's WWE, which is always going to get votes just because they're big. There's CMLL. I think some people have been talking about them as having a good year, but I haven't paid that much attention to them, unfortunately, so I can't really comment on that. I do think RevPro is an interesting candidate. I think they've, really benefiting from Ospreay, but they've had other stuff going on there too. So that's all stuff to consider there. But yeah, I think I'm going to go with AEW here, even though I don't think it's nearly as strong of a year as last year was. Best weekly TV show, I think Dynamite is the easy answer here for first place. After that, I think, I don't even know if I'm going to vote for a second place show. I think Rampage isn't bad by any stretch, but I don't think it's like particularly good. And Impact is fine.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I don't really have much to say.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say here.
I'm not going to vote for any WWE shows because they don't do anything for me. Like New Japan Strong just isn't. I mean, it's a bunch of like fine matches. I would put Impact above that. I probably would go Rampage second, I guess. It's at least watchable. It's, most weeks it's good. Yeah. Match of the year is a really interesting one, and we could go for probably an hour alone on this.
We'll probably, when the VOW poll comes out, we'll do time documenting our top 10 matches of the year.
Yeah. My number one's going to be FTR Briscoes from Final Battle. I think I thought that was just an amazing dog collar match and just a great match all around.
I haven't decided which dog collar match is going to be number one, if it's Punk MJF or Briscoes FTR. But they're going to be in my top two. I genuinely just don't know which one I'm going to pick. I think to some people, I am a very generous star rater. I think I have 9 5-star matches this year. But when wrestling grabs me, it grabs me. I'm a very ADD person, as Fred notices for how much I'm kind of doing stuff while we record this show. But if it grabs me, it's a lot easier for me to give it 5 stars. And there's been some tremendous work this year.
I'm going to jump through just some other awards I think are interesting in Category B, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to skip the region-specific MVPs because that's going to take a while. What do you think is feud of the year?
The Detroit Lions versus winning.
Isn't that every year?
Yeah, that's why it's funny. Now I have to find feud of the year. I put Ospreay Omega.
Okay.
they had only one match where they were opposite each other, and that was the semifinals of the Trios tournament, Aussie Open versus the Elite. But the way they built it on social media, the way they built it in promos, the post-match, just all of it, just great, great stuff. And now we're finally going to get to see them wrestle within the next 16 hours. The way they built this thing, it's tremendous. You can't speak any higher of it. Like I think FTR Briscoes is going to get a lot of love here.
That's a good one.
Should. Outside of those two,
Death Triangle Elite.
Too short. Good. I don't think there's enough animosity between the two teams. There's not enough.
That's fair.
To me, there's not enough storytelling. It's just like, hey, we got stripped of the titles. You won them. We want them back. Okay. It's a very simple story, but it doesn't grab me. There is enough connective tissue with the animosity between these guys. I know we had the Omega Pac Iron Man match from one of the first Dynamites. That was incredible.
Yes.
When it gets put on a streaming service, that's going to be my first watch because I'll be honest, I don't remember anything about it other than I enjoyed it. And then you obviously have the history with the Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. Outside of that, Fred, why should I be invested in this match other than these guys are all great wrestlers? Like
6 great matches, I guess.
Well, to me, there isn't enough depth there for the elements of why they're feuding for me to really put it over the top.
I think it's done well building like within the matches to, justify the feud and to build heat on the feud. So I think that is a candidate. Punk MJF is another one. Though I think like that was kind of an unsatisfying end to their feud because they only was half finished. Jericho Kingston is another one. But I also think that the end of that kind of got botched because it just carried on without him. And that was frustrating. Some people say Bloodline versus someone or Seth Rollins versus Cody. Those are probably the top WWE candidates. Julius, Yuri, and Stardom is one. I don't think Impact has really had a great feud this year for them to make an argument. And New Japan, I mean, what is it, like Okada White or Ospreay versus the refs? I mean, I feel like this hasn't been a great feud year for them, but anyways, goodness, let's see. Do you want to do like best technical or that stuff or anything else on here?
Yeah,
okay,
let's get a couple more and then we'll call it a day.
All right, let's do the individual styles. Best technical. Moxley's won the last two since he kind of works in MMA style. I feel like I might just vote for Zack Sabre here. I think he's I'm looking at best brawler. I can't read. Oh no, how embarrassing.
I was gonna say.
I was like, that's weird. Okay, sure. Danielson won last year, and then Zack Sabre won for like the 7 previous, I should say.
Best technical wrestler, Stalker Ichikawa. No, I think it's Danielson. I don't think
Danielson's a really good one. Yeah. Sabre hasn't had, I guess, a good enough year. Again, maybe someone in Stardom that I'm not thinking of because.
What about Claudio?
Claudio's a good one.
If Claudio's going to win a year, it hasn't been a phenomenal year for Sabre as far as the high-end in-ring stuff. Danielson's had a couple matches, but Claudio became a 2-time ROH World Champion. He had that tremendous debut against Zack Sabre where he beat him. I think if there's a year where it's not going to be one of those two guys, it's this year with Claudio.
Josh Alexander's one, I guess. I think he's had a good year.
I love Alexander. The exposure to me is not at a high enough level.
He probably won't win, but he's a candidate. I really don't think anyone in WWE is going to get serious votes for this. Just no one really works a technical style there, at least on a high level. Like it'd be like Chad Gable, and he's done low mid-card stuff all year. Brawler, which is the one. Oh, yeah.
Respect to Chad Gable.
Oh, no, he's really good.
I went to high school with him. He's a nice person.
Hey, I don't doubt it. I wish he got a better push and a character, but, we're here.
Send him to New Japan and let him do Super Juniors. That's all I want.
Best Brawler of the year. Moxley's won the last 2, and then the 6 years before that were Ishii.
It's Mox.
I think it's got to be Mox this year. I think that's an easy one. You could make an argument for the technical one. I just thought of for FTR. I suppose I think that they'd qualify as technical workers, don't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
probably.
could see Dax getting some votes there. Ishii still had a good year for best brawler. You could go Penta, Adam Page. Those are some other names, so toss out. And then best flyer, which I think has to go to Ray Phoenix. Well, for the third straight year, though, if you want to vote for Will Ospreay there, you can. He won the 4 prior years, but I think his style's really changed. I don't think of him as a high flyer anymore. Really,
He's not, but I will see your Phoenix and potentially raise you a Vikingo.
Yeah, I just think Phoenix has done a better job in ring, but Vikingo is definitely more amazing.
And I think that's where the argument is. Which one are you going to prefer? And that's going to be your deciding factor.
Yeah, basically. Although I'm sure some people vote for Ricochet because, I don't know, got to vote for WWE people. There are some people that only vote for WWE candidates, just so you know. Like, that is a thing that does happen.
I know. They suck.
I could go in depth on Rookie of the Year, but we don't really have the time for that. If you want, we can go into that next week.
Let's go into that next week because I want to see a list of official candidates because I'm not 100% sure who will and won't qualify.
I put together a list because I've done, that's the second year I've done this, just to see who is eligible, and then I email it to Meltzer, and I think he uses some of them at least. One thing I do want to discuss before we go, which is my guilty pleasure award, the most disgusting promotional tactic.
It's Vince McMahon on SmackDown right after the initial Wall Street Journal allegations came out.
I think that's it. But I do think there's other good candidates. You have the perennial going to Saudi Arabia one.
Look, I get it, money. But that's tired. Like,
I get it. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And also,
it's like voting Bill Belichick Coach of the Year. He should be Coach of the Year pretty much every year, but you can't just keep giving it to him.
Yeah, it's the LeBron thing I mentioned earlier this conversation. The other one I would point to is the Ric Flair last match, because he should not have been in the ring. There's serious concerns he was going to die in the ring. So I think that's a good option on the table. I probably will vote for Vince using his bullshit to promote SmackDown. And I think that's let's do one more real quick, which is worst match of the year, which I just think is a fun one. I think I'm going to vote for Pat McAfee versus Vince McMahon. I know that was just a gimmick to get Steve Austin out there for a pop on the second night of WrestleMania, but I got to tell you, watching Pat McAfee, who is a talented he's a talented wrestler, have to sell for old Vince McMahon offense is really embarrassing in 2022.
Can I just say that Pat McAfee takes the best stunner in the history of professional wrestling?
He's good. Scott Hall is up there too, but yeah, I mean, I like the McAfee sell too.
Like, the McAfee sell just to me felt more natural, and I think that's why I like it more.
That's fair.
The Scott Hall one, that was good. But the McAfee where it's just like, oh shit, and then he just kind of goes kerplunko. Like, to me, that's just, it's A+ stuff.
Yeah. All right, I think I'm done with this bullshit. Unless you want to go over any others.
No, I think
we're almost 2 hours in. So
yeah, I think we're good. You can find us on Twitter at GoodBadHungee. You can find me on Twitter at TheRealForno or at The Vikings Wire. You can find Fred on Twitter at Flagrant Wrestling. You can send us a DM on Twitter to ask us a question, which we will answer on the show. Or you can join the Voices of Wrestling Discord, which you can ask us a question in our channel, Good, Bad, and Hungee. And we will answer those either in real time or on the show as well. And you can find us both on our own feed and on the Voice of Wrestling Podcast Network feed. Please rate, subscribe. 5 full stars does a lot for us as far as visibility and making sure people are able to see our show. And if you haven't checked it out, check out the Voices of Wrestling YouTube channel, where we, along with all the other great podcasts on the network, will post little clips of the show. So if this is your first time listening to us, we thank you. And there are a few clips of our previous shows on the site, so you can see if this is something that you really want to dive into. We're just 2 fun-loving guys who love this stupid sport of professional wrestling. In the meantime, I'm Tyler, and that's Fred. Have yourself a great day. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, all.